How's it going, Jack Tackers, and welcome back to another video for you guys. Today I'm going to be doing my review for the brand new Netflix series Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous. Now, if you guys don't know, I'm actually a huge fan of the Jurassic Park / World franchise. Jurassic Park is in my top 5 favorite films of all time, and I was very excited for this series coming to Netflix. I knew it was animated, but I was still excited because the Clone Wars with Star Wars, what they were able to pull off in that series was amazing, and I was kind of hoping that Jurassic World Camp Cretaceous would be the Clone Wars for the Jurassic Park franchise. And so here's my review. Let's get into it. What are my thoughts on this series? Did I like it? Did I not like it? I'm somewhere in between. It wasn't awful. I am slightly underwhelmed. However, I wish it was a bit better in certain elements, but I guess let's just start off with the pros and then kind of move on to what I didn't like. So for pros, the soundtrack, the music, of course, you got that amazing, wondrous, beautiful score in this series, and every time, a musical cue shows up, I'm like, heard that one before. And it's just super awesome. They do grasp that sense of wonder in this series at certain moments, of course. So I do appreciate the use of music, of course, because it's just so iconic. I mean, it's so iconic. There's also many references and Easter eggs to the films, and I won't spoil anything, so don't worry, but there is a character from one of the movies that does show up in this series, and it was neat. It was neat to see that character, and there's subtle references. First of all, if you're a huge Jurassic Park fan like I am, then you'll catch more things. But if you're just kind of like the average moviegoer, the average Jurassic Park fan, and I like the Jurassic Park franchise, but if you're not like a super big fan and study it as a religion, of course, you're not going to catch some things. But for the most part, you should be alright, but as a big fan of the series, I was kind of catching on to some certain things that, you blink and you miss it, you wouldn't be able to hear it if you weren't a big fan, you wouldn't be able to notice it. So I really did like the Easter eggs and references and name drops and stuff like that. I do like that they try and develop certain characters. I think the character of Darius, who is the main lead, probably the best character. Him and his dad's relationship, what they do in this story, is pretty emotional, and I like that they kind of added that element. They did go a little bit deep into this series, just kind of developing their characters and making them more likable. Although overall, these characters do kind of come off as very forced in terms of their bond as a group. It's hard to describe, but a lot of it just feels very forced and rushed, if I'm being completely honest. But we'll get to that later. Also, it was cool to see a different perspective of when certain things occurred. So if you do not know, this series is basically taking place at the same time as Jurassic World is going on. So you do see a different perspective of the helicopter crash into the aviary where Masrani dies. And that's something really neat that I enjoyed, because you could see different perspectives. And then when you go back and watch Jurassic World, you're kind of like, oh shit, so this is what's going on when the Indominus Rex isn't on screen. They're attacking these campers. So it's kind of neat to see that aspect, and that's definitely something I really enjoyed about this series. Now, in terms of cons, the animation and strictly the character design for the humans, it's not good. The character designs are so goofy. They are so weird looking. You do kind of get used to it, I guess, as the show goes along, but ultimately they look goofy. The dinosaurs look okay. They look pretty realistic. So their character designs, of course, for the dinosaurs are way better than the ones for the humans. And yeah, the ones for the humans are just... man, I couldn't get into it. There's also many childish moments. This is a show made for kids, unfortunately, and it hurts to say that, and I'm not trying to be edgy like, oh, I'm too cool for kids shows. No, I like my fair share of kids shows, alright? And I can respect them, of course, but I wanted this to be similar to the films, or at least somewhat similar. And don't get me wrong, there's definitely intense moments. There's dinosaurs about to eat people, and there's dinosaurs that do eat people in this series. But There's no blood. There's no guts. There's no limbs being tossed around, like in the first film when Samuel L. Jackson's character gets his arm bit off, and Ellie Sattler's in the room, and she's like, "Oh, you're here." No, it's the arm. There's none of that, unfortunately. But there is some cool moments, of course, with the dinosaurs roaring and trying to eat people, whatever. But overall, there's many jokes and childish banter, and just the writing is very geared towards children, and it doesn't try to be too sophisticated. Again, there are some elements that do try to go deeper into this world and what's going on with the characters specifically, but most of it just kind of comes off as like just very jokey and kid friendly, which is fine. Kids love dinosaurs. They're gonna want to watch this show. But I was just expecting it to be a bit more mature, and more realistic, similar to the first few movies, especially the first one. The first film is the best example of just taking itself seriously and tackling the situation at hand as a normal person would. And not to say that the kids don't act like normal kids in this, but a lot of it is it's too much kid friendliness, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. The show is also a little repetitive at moments. This doesn't go into a lot of Jurassic World, Jurassic Park lore. It tries to a little bit with certain research and what they're doing in the lab, and especially like I think episode 2, that episode took place where they do go to the lab, and there's a few things there. And then obviously the campers finding out about the Indominus Rex, like, oh, Henry Wu, he made this monster and all that mumbo jumbo. But there's not a lot added to the story. It's just sort of what this show is basically like, oh, I'm watching Jurassic World. And then when you're watching that, you're kind of like, oh, but there's something else going on. Nothing too big of a deal, though. Like, yeah, some of these campers are running about, but there's not a lot depth in there. Attempts are made, but it's not enough, just in my opinion. There's too few consequences as well. As I previously mentioned, people do die, but, well, I guess this is kind of spoilery, so spoiler warning. I try to stay spoiler-free, but I'll mention something right now. So, one of the campers, like, you think he's gonna die, and then, like, I knew that at the end, they show him, and he's like, oh no, he's gonna be alive. They do a Batman v Superman ending moment where you see the dirt rise, you see his hand twitch at the end. That was kind of stupid fake out. No, none of the main characters die. Of course, the main group that wasn't with Ben and Bumpy, they thought he was dead, but he wasn't. And that's just kind of interesting because in the first film, some of the main characters do die. The classic toilet scene. I'm sure you guys remember that. But yeah, we don't have any of those moments. There are a few characters that die, but they're not main characters. You meet a few people and they're like, oh, running. Yeah, yada, yada, yada. So a little too few consequences. Again, what they did with Darius and his dad, that was cool. Well, not cool, but I like the attempt at character development and character depth with what they were trying to achieve with the character of Darius, of course. And I'm interested to see where they go from here. The ending was kind of interesting, where they took things. But yeah, I'm wondering, I guess there'll be a season 2. I mean, that's the only thing that they could do. I don't think they would tie it into the movies, like especially in Dominion. I don't think they would tie it in. But that's just my personal opinion. I mean, there's so much going on with Jurassic World Dominion, like I don't care about these characters, and that's the thing. I don't care much about these characters, to be honest. Darius was cool. The rest is kind of Anyway, I thought this show was alright. It wasn't bad, but it was fine. It wasn't great, but for what it was, it did what it needed to do. But of course, let me hear your thoughts on this show down in the comments below. And if you guys liked this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.